Hello everyone, very good morning. I give you a warm welcome on this weekend Sunday. I hope you are enjoying this Sunday so far fantastically. So today we will have introduction to big data and Hadoop. We will try to understand what is big data is, what is Hadoop, how Hadoop helps to implement the big data concepts. So there is an agenda for today. So wherein we will cover advantages of Hadoop on the traditional databases, how does Hadoop ecosystem works, hands-on Hadoop, important software tools from the Hadoop ecosystem, about the career shift in Hadoop, and who should and who shouldn't aspire Hadoop. Okay. So before beginning this, let's start with first thing. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So till date, what sort of data you have worked with? Okay. You might have worked with the structured data when you will have the data like name, ID, product name information, date of birth, right? This kind of data we have got so far till date. But since last 10 years, the world is changing. Now we have very different varieties of data with us. As in the diagram you can see, we have email data, clickstream data, social data, images, PDFs, server logs, audio, video, and all these data are normally of a big size data. So first of all, first we will categorize the data, what sort of different data we have and what sort of data we are dealing with till date. So there is the one structured data, other category semi-structured, and next is unstructured data. Structured data is the one with which we are dealing with in our daily day-to-day life. It is the data which is very much in the human readable format. You can store it in your row and table, like what we data store in our Oracle table, MS SQL table, Teradata table, very normal data. Or what data typically you see in an Excel sheet, wherein the row and columns are there. That's a structured data because you can read it very easily. You can process it easily. There's another category which is the unstructured data and with which we would be dealing with today, and it includes the data that I just mentioned, these audio, video, images, PDF, these things. And last category is the semi-structured, where the data nature is of, you will find structured, but still while you are processing and storing it, it behaves as unstructured data. And the very good example for this kind of data is XML data, where you will find a particular structure, but still you will face problem while storing it and processing it. So nowadays we have forgotten the GBs. We deal with TB, petabytes and beyond. Gigabytes now is an old term. There is a very good statistic that came that in every 2 days in today's generation, in today's date, we are adding the same amount of data to this world the mankind has ever produced since the inceptions. So the rate with which we are generating data is really huge, really high. And on top of the biggest problem is the kind of data that we are generating is having an unstructured nature. So we have a problem in storing and processing this data. Because ultimately our purpose is to store it somewhere. Otherwise we will not be able to make a use of it. Okay. So these are some very interesting facts about the big data. You can read in slide. Some of them I will read for you. Like YouTube users upload 72 hours of video every minute. Google receives 4 million searches per minute. Yeah. Facebook users share 2.46 millions of sharing of content. Right. Skype users gets connected for 23,300 hours. So see, this happens around the world in a minute, okay, on the World Wide Web. So the point is, we are generating data, we are generating the different varieties of data, and the problem is how to store this data, how these all companies deal with the data. And not only this, but even the size of the structured data is getting huge, because the today's world demands not to delete any data. Previously we were really not bothered about lot of data, but in today's world we want to store each and every data. Since we do a lot of analytics, we do a lot of data mining, and this analytics and data mining for taking an effective business decision requires a lot of data to deal with. So before we move into Hadoop, I would like to tell you one story. Okay. So what happened in 4 or 5 years back, and before this story, I would like to tell you about the Google. That whatever search we do in Google, that gets stored somewhere, and daily Google churn about petabytes of data. So in this story, it's a very good story that that's kind of a very social contribution that Google has done, and it was able to make it out with the help of big data analytics only. So what happened 4 or 5 years is back in USA, people started, Google has identified that from across the different part of United States, people were trying to search different things, like that people were observing that they are having some kind of cold or cough or body ache or the shivering. This kind of symptoms people were identified. They were searching some medicines, or they were searching some kind of cause all of a sudden. So Google has identified that why all of a sudden this kind of searches are happening over the web, and that was continuously for 2-3 days. The trend was there. So then Google contacted the health ministry of United States, and then they identified those zone and region from where the searches was really huge, and then they collected the contacted those people who made those searches, collected their blood samples, and they find something common in that. And then later on it came that it was the H1N1, okay, that is what we call today swine flu, which was present in their blood. So even before doing any health checkup, Google was able to tell that some kind of disease there, even before a blood sampling is done. So that's the power of big data analytics. So what is Hadoop? Hadoop is a free Java-based programming framework, and it's a proprietor of Apache. It's a software framework that works on a distributed system. Okay, so it's not a single standalone server application. It always works on a distributed server. The basic 4 pillars of Hadoop are the scalability, fault tolerant, high availability, and distributed computing. When we say in Hadoop about the large data sets, so it deals with the terabytes of data, petabytes of data, and when we say about the large clusters, then it deals with the hundreds of thousands of the cluster. So till now, what we understand in the world, the data size is growing, and the type of data which is growing is of the different structure, and we need some kind of mechanism to store it, to process it, and Hadoop is the one that provides this facility to you. Okay. So the Hadoop evolution history. This is a very interesting history. And what happens? So one thing we know all about, that Google is a master in the internet world. It is at the prominent. So in 2003, Google has presented a white paper, and where they had explained how they are able to store the large volume of data. So this was a thing that they were doing in since the late 90s till the 2003. So what they were doing, they have presented it in 2003 in a white paper conference. This conference was attended by a person, his name was Dov Cutting. He was working at Yahoo at that time, and he really likes the idea whatever Google has presented. So actually Google has presented a programming, different kind of programming style, that is we call today as a map reduce programming kind of thing, that is being done on a distributed setup of computers with the help of a effective logic of some distributed file mechanism. Okay, so then it really inspired Dov Cutting very much, and then he thought that I will come up with my own approach of doing the same thing. So then he came up with something, and what map reduce model, what SDF file system based model, what we have today is known as the Hadoop. So it was invented by Dov Cutting at the Yahoo laboratory. Very interestingly, Hadoop name is really not an acronym. It sounds like an acronym, but it is not. But it's a name of a toy elephant of Dov's 8-year-old son. Okay. So in the world, big data evolution. So we'll talk about since the 90s and till 2015, last 25 years trend. In the beginning, we were dealing with the megabytes of data, where we were having a enterprise resource planning systems. Then we came late 90s, gigabytes, CRM, which is the customer relationship model. Then in the 2000s and till the 2000, very much 2000 to 2006 and 7, we were having the World Wide Web, which was dealing with the terabytes of data. Okay, and now post 2008, 2009, and since the very much inception of Hadoop, and the world has changed. A lot of dynamism is happening. Each day, new thing is coming, new trend is coming. The kind of data has changed totally, and now we deal with the petabytes of data, and the kind of application we implement is the big data. So big data says transactions plus interactions plus observations. Okay. This is the very much trend in today's world. Big data is exploding. IDC is the Internet Data Community. So you see in the diagram, and first of all, before looking at the diagram, just see the size of the units of data. 1 gigs, we know 1 gigabytes of data. We understand it very well. But I think we may or may not know, some of you, but 1 exabyte of data is how much, and 1 zettabytes of data is how much. You can see in the diagram. Okay, so IDC estimated, so we will talk about the zettabytes. It is almost the last unit. That there are units, but as of now the world deals with the zettabytes. So zettabyte says that 2011 the overall data size available on the internet was the 1.8, and 2013 it came to 4.4, but they have estimated that by 2020 it would be 44 zettabytes of data. The biggest reason behind is definitely the kind of data is changing, and the second thing is that paperwork is getting reduced day by day, and the digital world is increasing day by day, and you know and you understand this very well. So that's the biggest reason that the overall data size of the internet is exploding. Okay, and apart from this, the another biggest reason is the companies, the business demands the analytics and data mining, and that requires a lot of data. So these are the 3 V's of the big data: volume, velocity, variety. This definition is given by IBM. Volume tells us the overall data size is increasing. The overall data what we have is increasing day by day, and we have a huge volume of data. Velocity says the rate with which the data is exploding is really immense. The variety says now we don't have only the ID, name, product name, date of birth information, but we have audio, video, images, server logs, these kind of different variety of the data. So these are the 3 V's definition of big data. Pillars of Hadoop: scalable, fault tolerant, high available, and distributed computing. In later on slides, we will see what are all this about, and we will understand them in detail. I believe we understand by this time that why we need Hadoop. But I will summarize once again that the business competition is very high. That's the primary reason. Increasing size of the data. Yes, we understand that the data size is increasing. The third reason is, says hardware cost for the storage against the data processing cost. So what is happening? You will understand this point very much in later slides. So wherein I will explain you the horizontal scalability and the vertical scalability. And the fourth point is the write once and read many times. So it says that Hadoop works on the, this is particularly known as the WORA, actually, WORA, where it says the write once and read access, so many times. Okay. So wherein we just write the data at one time and we read it through many times.
So,
yeah.
Piyush, can you
Yes.
can you go back? Yeah. So
Yeah.
this last line, write once and read many times. So some people have question as to what does that really mean?
Yes, exactly. So what happens? What happened exactly? That in Hadoop system, in Hadoop ecosystem, once we load some data, right? So we just write it once. Okay. We really do not parse the data. We do not delete the data. We do not modify the data. Data is there. It is fixed. So we wrote it once. Okay. But there would be different downstream systems who would refer those data again and again and many times. So since we wrote lot of data and at a only single time, we just dump the data. It's like dumping only. You're dumping and dumping and dumping continuously. But there are systems, applications who are connected to Hadoop, and they are reading the data. Since they are processing it, since they are doing some mining on it, since they are analyzing it, so you read those data, refer those data again and again many times. That's the thing. What happens in typical RDBMS structure, that once we write something, then we tend to write it again. We tend to update it again. We modify the data. But here we do not follow this approach.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are the popular, very big users, and I would say initial users of Hadoop. Okay, all those big names. And definitely Google name is not there because they are the one who have invented, who were following it since the inception. Very interestingly, Facebook. So you know that each day Facebook generates about the 800 to 900 terabytes of data. That's the volume that Facebook generates per day. There's a second after the Google. Google has never disclosed the details, but it is definitely almost like 10 times or maybe the 20 times than Facebook. But Facebook has disclosed the daily data volume. But not only this, if you see in like just an example, like in airline industry, when an airline takes a flight takeoff and till the transit and till journey say 10 hours of journey, a typical flight generates some 300 to 400 terabytes of data in its black box, right? This is Hadoop ecosystem. This is Hadoop applications. Okay, so we see a lot of things over here. Just see for your reference. So this is actually like a very much a current today's programming world, wherein what we have, just compare it with the existing programming world, wherein we have something. If you see any programming language, any programming package, you will find some kind of programs, languages there to program. You will have some kind of SQLs, SQLs. You will be having some databases, there would be some kind of monitoring utility, you would be having some administrative utility, right? This kind of thing. So the same thing Hadoop offers, Hadoop ecosystem offers to different things. So here the pig, you see pig scripting, which is actually a proprietary of Yahoo. So Yahoo invented pig, and it is like a programming language. You see Hive, which is a query, SQL query kind of language, which is a proprietary of Facebook. Facebook invented Hive. There is a Mahout, machine learning language. There is a distributed processing. MapReduce and HDFS, these are the core terminologies of Google. NoSQL database is there, which is the HBase. So it's a database to Hadoop. There is a Zookeeper, so which is the coordinator, a kind of administrative utility. There is a workflow and scheduling, OZ. Okay, so this is all about the Hadoop ecosystem. There is a data transfer utility is also there, which is the Scoop, REST or ODBC connectivity. So Scoop is a utility through which you can copy the data from RDBMS and to copy to and copy from, both you can do into Hadoop. Hadoop and RDBMS communication takes place using Scoop. So we have everything in our suite. Yes.
One quick question. So you see, all these applications are very important, I think, in Hadoop ecosystem. So can you take a case of, say, for example, Facebook or Google, and explain how these applications would fit into a scenario, a business, a company scenario?
Okay. So what happens that once you store that, so I will just explain you the role of everything, right, Pratik?
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So see, what will happen that all of your data. So first we start with the, say, HBase. So you will store, a company would store all its data to the HBase. Okay. Suppose I need to read some data and I need to make some results out of data. I have two options. Either I can write a pig scripting. Those who are comfortable writing a C kind of programming language, C++, they can use pig. Those who are comfortable with SQL kind of like writing SQL query, they can use Hive. Okay. There's a machine learning that helps in analytics. So those who want to do some kind of data analytics, they use machine learning language, Mahout. In order to copy data from your Oracle or MS SQL or Teradata to Hadoop, you will use Scoop, because the data would be available somewhere, right? And your Hadoop would interact with them. So you will use Scoop. There would be a utility, Zookeeper. So once everything is set up, once your entire Hadoop cluster is set up, then there would be Zookeeper who would actually do the coordination between all these things. Okay, all these pig, Hive, Mahout, HBase, all these things, Zookeeper would do a coordination between all these packages. There would be, so suppose you set up your jobs in the production, then at that time you would be having OZ that will help you to schedule something. So therein, at that time you set something that I need to invoke this particular job. So OZ would help you to schedule some jobs. And MapReduce HDFS definitely will see in details. So, Pratik, does it make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. So here we have, yeah.
Piyush, can you go back just one slide back again? So one of the question was, One of the question was, if someone has a business analytics kind of a profile, so where would that person fit into? I mean, which application would he be interacting more with? Say, for example, someone who does data extraction, data reporting, and analysis of it. So which application would he be interacting more with?
Yes, I'll tell you. So for that profile, they would be interacting mostly with Scoop. So that's a utility that will help them to extract the data, to make the meaningful data from the Hadoop system to their relationals, and or maybe to Excel MS Excel, and then therein they can write their business cases over there. Yes. So Scoop is a utility for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So they would not interact much with Mahout, is it? Or
Uh,
Query Hive?
yeah. No. Exact. Actually, they can use Pig or Hive if they want to extract some customize information. So suppose I want to take the full dump, I can use Scoop. But I want to restrict my query, I want to select some part of the data on the basis of some conditions. So in normal SQL we do select star from the table name where clause this order by and join the table, this kind of clauses we write. If they want to select some particular specific data, they can use the languages like Pig or Hive. And Mahout is very much particularly for the analytics team who would use it. Not actually, Mahout is the next extension of the our typical analytics what we have in SAS, R, or SPSS. What we do a typical analytics on a further next version is the Mahout. So that is basically machine learning. Very advanced analytics is there. So it's kind of a robotics where you teach robot something. I'm just comparing. It's not like not a robotics, but it's a high analytics where you teach the machine to do something. Okay.
Okay, makes sense. So, so if we were to compare, because a lot of people here understands SQL, that
Huh.
select example that you gave. So, if you were to compare SQL with this, so then something which Hive would do is what SQL
Yes.
does in a relation
Exactly.
scenario.
Exactly. Hive is exactly compatible with SQL. Build exactly. Hive is a
Okay.
SQL-based query language. Yeah. It is
So
very much for those.
someone who has SQL understanding can almost use Hive pretty easily. Is
Yeah.
that
Yeah. They can pick up Hive in 2 days. Yeah. It's a very easy task. Yes.
okay? And how about Mahout? Someone who understands SAS and R and knows how to write random forest algorithm, machine learning algorithm, so they can write
Perfect.
that in Mahout as
Mahout.
well.
Perfectly. Yeah. They are the one for them. The Mahout is there.
Okay.
Yes.
And how about pick? So where does pick fit into, say, in a
Pick.
relational scenario?
Yeah. So actually, Pig and Hive work side by side. So they are exactly the same. The kind of results you produce in Hive, the same thing you can produce in Pig. But only difference is they have a different programming style. So in Pig, we have a programming like our C based programming is there. So wherein we define some data, we read some data, we have a if, else, array, right? Our normal functions, string functions, these things. So processing is there. The data processing is there in the Pig. So that's a
Okay.
programming. Yeah, that's a structured programming language,
Okay.
block-based programming language. Yeah, Pig.
So one of the question is, can we compare it with, say, Excel VBA codes, the pig?
Yes, exactly, perfectly. Yeah, perfectly. Yeah, makes sense.
Or
VBA. Okay, but
one more
for
question. One more question
yeah,
is there.
yeah, perfect. Yeah, please.
No, no, you switch.
Hello, sir. In
Yeah,
Mahout, you said it is like more of a robotics kind of thing where you teach the machine to do things.
yeah,
Hello. So,
yeah.
what kind of things you teach to the machine in analytics? Like, what that machine will do in analytics? Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, so it's a that like I said that advanced level of analytics, right? So the thing is, I'll explain it with a simple example. What happens exactly, in VBA Excel, right? Where we set some kind of mechanism, okay? That first do this, select this particular column, and then perform this kind of sorting, then do this grouping, put the data to this kind of reporting or some kind of thing, right? And that particular thing works again and again, the same logic. So the same thing applies here. Once you are comfortable with writing analytics in SAS or somewhere, then you can use the same kind of utility, and in Mahout you can do a machine learning, right? So therein you can apply those logics. So like that way it works. Are you with me? Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir, near about.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
So say, yeah. Okay. So for anyone who even you interact with big Hive or any of the utility mentioned, but very important for them to understand the MapReduce and HDFS because that's the core of Hadoop. Okay. So here I am comparing Hadoop to the RDBMS. Hadoop deals with the petabytes of data. Yes, you understand. The integrity in Hadoop is low. If you refer the integrity concepts of RDMS, data schema is not fixed. It is dynamic. Access method is interactive or batch. Scaling is linear. Data structure is definitely unstructured. Normalization does not happen over here, and query response time is slow. It is latency because you are doing a batch processing. It's a typical comparison between Hadoop and RDBMS. Okay.
So
Now,
can we go back if you don't mind? Yeah.
yeah,
So you said query processing is low because of batch
uh,
processing, right?
yeah, actually,
So can you elaborate on this? Because the
yes,
general perception is that we use Hadoop because we want to kind of get response from large amount of data very quickly.
yeah. So the thing is, see, exactly, it is exactly the thing is, but some point of time till now we were dealing with the megabytes or the gigabytes, right? We write some query, we get results in 1 minute or say 1.5 minutes. But in Hadoop, we write queries on terabytes of data or petabytes of data. So wherein what happens, yes, your query will work and it will give you a response time. That's not a problem. But the thing is, it depends on how big your cluster is. Okay. So later on slides when I will explain you about the HDFS and the MapReduce programming model, so you will understand that it is very proportionate to the cluster. So suppose I have a cluster of 10 computers, then your response time would be of that type. If I have a cluster of 100 computers, my response time would definitely reduce by. So it depends on the cluster size. Okay.
Okay.
We really don't need a huge server capacity, huge server processing units, a RAM. We don't need. We need simple normal computer because Hadoop's architecture is the simplest actually. So it works on a very simple programming model, but it always proportionate to the how big your cluster is for getting a response. So let's dig into the Hadoop architecture. Here, actually, since last two years, Hadoop came with the Hadoop 2, which is known as the YARN, yet another resource negotiator. That is the Hadoop 2. But here I will explain you the Hadoop 1 because from the beginning point, from the very starting point, it is good to start with the Hadoop 1. There is no more big changes in Hadoop 2 as well, but let's first concentrate on Hadoop 1 because that's the core utility of architecture. So you will find two things over here. One is the name node, you can see in the top, and in the bottom we have data node. Data node are the one who are the servers of your cluster, okay, and name node is the master. So it is a master slave kind of relationship. There is a secondary name node is also available in case your primary name node goes down. Okay. So this is a very simple architecture of Hadoop. We will elaborate this architecture. As of now, only understand the two parts: name node, data node. Name node our master and data node is our slave computer. That's it. Okay. We'll see it in detail. So this programming model, which is the Hadoop programming model, is this works on the two things. I will just go back to the same slide once again. So one master slave relationship is there. There is another master-slave relationship is there. And even before explaining this to you, I would like to tell you about that any programming you will find that two things. One thing is to store the data, that primarily deals with the data storage part. Okay. And the second thing you would do is you will write some kind of task, you will write some kind of programs. The same thing we do in any kind of programming language you might have done. Even if you do Excel, you store some data into Excel, and then second thing on top of it, you write some programs. So here the data storage part is being governed by the HDFS, and the data programming part is being MapReduce. Okay. So HDFS, which is the file allocation part. HDFS is having a full form of Hadoop Distributed File Systems. This is a utility by which we pass on the data to Hadoop, and Hadoop splits the data and allocates the same data to the different available servers and execute our task. This is the one utility by which Hadoop distributed the data. Okay. We'll go in details. And the another part is the MapReduce. So wherein you have a program, and then who are the servers, who are the community computers, those data nodes are also known as the community computers, or our servers, who actually does the execution part. So who should execute your program? So that responsibility and that decision is being governed by the MapReduce programming model. As of now, understand this only. Okay. Now we'll further see. So name node. So one more time I'm telling you, there's the name node, data node, which is the part of HDFS. Okay. HDFS, which is the file allocation, is having a master as name node and slave is data node. There is another master-slave relationship is there, wherein you have a MapReduce. In MapReduce, job tracker is the master and task tracker is the slave. We will see it in detail. So as of now, name node, so which is the master of HDFS, what it does, once it receives the data, it splits the data into different chunks. Okay, those chunks are popularly known as the block. It allocates the block to the different servers, and this allocation is being before allocating to the cluster, it identifies who are the servers who are actually free for taking up this data, and after finding the availability, it assigns the data to those servers. Okay, so name node basically maintains the metadata from to where my data is getting split and where the data is being copied. It maintains all the metadata information. Suppose in the event of any of the data node fails, then it is the responsibility of name node to identify another data node and to assign the data that what the failed node was executing to some other data nodes. Okay, this is the basic responsibility and working of name node. And on the same line, we have a job tracker. Now, what happens is in job tracker, I am comparing both side by side, so you will understand. You will have a good understanding of it. In job tracker, what happens is the job tracker identifies the available data node for taking up the new task, and then it assigns the task to those data node. Okay, so the same thing what name node was doing will being done by job tracker, but here it assigns the task. Here it actually copies the program over there. One very big difference between a Hadoop and a normal any other program, any other technology is that till now we were copying the data to the server, okay, data to the program for execution. But here what we do, we copy data somewhere and we send the program for the execution. Okay, so in that way we do a faster execution. Okay, so this is a very typical configuration of any data node, wherein it is having so we do not expect it to be of a very huge size, very huge configurations. It's a very normal server which should have a capacity of 1 to 5 terabytes, processing power 2 to 2.5 gigahertz, and RAM is 64 to 512 GB. So that's it. We never demand it to be very high, and it's a configuration of it, one typical server, one typical data node. Okay, and here is the task tracker. Yes.
Piyush, can you go back to the last slide?
Yeah.
So it looks like, almost almost a normal PC, except for the RAM part. Almost a normal PC could be considered as a data node. Is that so?
Exactly. That's what my point is. Even your machine, my machine, can be a good fit for the Hadoop cluster. So it never demands. It just demands a simple computer, simple server that can be part of your cluster. Because it's the way it works, it splits the overall data. The splitting part we'll see in later slides, and assign those data to the different machines, and then each individual machine work on that particular task. So what happens, parallelly everyone is doing the same thing. So that's why it is able to manage the huge data with the huge processing time and with the effective response time to the client machines. So that's the beauty of Hadoop.
Okay, and so basically this is data node, and in the name node, only the metadata would be there as to which data is getting stored in which data node. Is that so? Is that I'm understanding?
Yes, exactly. In name node, yeah, all the metadata information gets stored into the name node only. Yes, it maintains, because you need, among all those data node, you need some kind of there must be someone to monitor them, someone to administer them. So for that you have a name node that controls the data node in the system.
Okay, thank you.
So this is the task trackers. Very important point. The task tracker is the one that gets executed at the data node machine. Okay. All the empty slots available in the task tracker indicate the number of tasks it can accept. Right. This is a very important point, because on the basis of empty slots, it identifies which data node is available for the new slots, new task. Okay, so that decision is being taken care on the basis of empty slots.
So where does this task tracker fit between name node and data node?
Yeah, so that's what I was, from the beginning I was comparing both side by side. So name node data node is a one master slave relationship, while job tracker task tracker is another master slave relationship. Name node data node deals with the data allocation, and job tracker task tracker deals with the task allocation. Simple difference.
What is a can you give me an example of a task?
Yes. So task example, a task example could be, I have a 1 terabyte of data and I need to sort this data. Okay. On the basis of a column, say name. Okay, so my task would be a program that would say, if I had to write the SQL, so this would become my task. I would say select, say, overall data, start from the table, and I will not select from the table, order by name, descending, okay, or ascending. Okay, so this particular SQL clause, select this from table, order by name, would become my one of the tasks. Right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
The task is a program. So that's what from the beginning I was telling you, that there are, in any world programming language, you will find two parts. One is the data, other is the program. Data allocation is being done by HDFS, Hadoop Distributed File System, wherein we have master name node, slave is data node. There is another part, the programming part. So there is one program, job tracker, which is the master, task tracker, which is the slave. That's how it works. One more point I would like to tell you over here, data node. Okay, so this might be a question that someone could have asked, but no one has asked. So how it identifies the failed, because this is the thing with which the entire world wants to deal with, the failures. Okay, the question on the availability of the server, that's a really big question, because you are dealing with a cluster of 100 computers, and what if someone fails, right? So how it identifies the failure. So what happens in this master slave relationship? So first we will deal with we will talk about the SDFS. In SDFS, what happens? Data node sends heartbeat messages in every 2 seconds to the name node. And when name node receives the heartbeat from the data node, it understands, okay, my data node is alive. Okay, it is working fine. The same thing happened. Task tracker also sends the heartbeat messages just like a ping. Okay, just like a ping. It sends to the job tracker and tells, yes, we are alive. If 2 seconds expires, no heartbeat is received from a data node, then it assumes, okay, this particular data node is down. In the same way, the job tracker assumes that this particular task tracker is down. Okay, so what it does in SDFS, name node will assign the data file. It will copy whatever was getting executed at that particular machine to some other data node. And in the case of MapReduce, the job tracker, it will assign those tasks to some other machines. That's why how it works. So parallelly, you need to understand these two things. Okay. MapReduce, in a nutshell, if you see, so big data is coming in the very first column. You see, it is getting copied to a lot of servers. Okay, so here is the SDFS that allocates the data to different servers, and then from there it gets reduced. Okay, so that's the final output that goes to the client machines. So let's see the same example through this diagram. This is the entire life cycle of a MapReduce. Okay, in the input we are getting this kind of data. Here we need to do a group count. Okay, group by.
Hey Piyush, can we go
Yes.
back just one slide back?
Yeah.
So in a very simple layman term, how would you explain map reduce? You know, what exactly does map do and what exactly does reduce do in Hadoop environment?
Yes, yeah. So yeah, I knew that. So actually, this to explain the same thing, we will see the next diagram. Next diagram is exactly the same thing. So we will. I would suggest we'll refer this diagram. So see this. Once you understand this, then understand this would become easy. The previous slide. So concentrate over here. So what happened? In the input, I have received a lot of words. Okay. And I wanted to do a group count of the word. How many times a particular word has occurred. So word count I wanted to do. Okay. So what I will do in the first phase, I will pass on this data to Hadoop, and then I will, once you pass it to the Hadoop, in a splitting part, what will happen? Hadoop will assign one line. Say there are 3 lines, so it will assign, say we have three different commodity computers, 3 different data nodes. So first line to first computer, second line to second computer, third line to third computers. Okay. In the mapping part, each one will do their own count. So first computer will say, okay, I read it entirely, I found that there is one, where is one, river is one. Second will say, I counted my own stuff, I found car is one, car one, river one. The third will say, I found, okay, I counted there one, car one, bear one. Okay. Yeah. Then the next part comes is the shuffling part. Okay, wherein you will shuffle the data, you will group by the data. Okay, so here you will be having some kind of programs who will do a shuffling for you. So from each data node, it would be read, and this shuffling would happen, and data would arrange accordingly on the group by count. After that, we have a reduce phase. So in reduce phase, what will happen? We will accumulate the data. We will summarize the data. So map says to expand the data, to allocate the data. Map means allocates the data, to map the data. And reduce says that now everyone is counted and it's the time to summarize the data. So reduce says do a summarization. So it will rate and it will say there is 2, car is 3, there is 2 and there is 2. So here the shuffling and reducing is also known as the just reducing, sorting happens and then it reduces the data and then final result it's accumulate and given to the client machines. So this is how it works, right? Suppose you have a yeah, please tell.
No, so basically, in this example, you're saying that we're just counting how many times a particular word occurs in a string that we have received, right?
Yes,
So in order
yes.
to do that, some program within Hadoop or within MapReduce is splitting it up, and then mapping is which is basically. So what is mapping doing in this scenario?
Okay. In this scenario, in mapping, what you are doing, you are passing on this data to different. So say you have a just example like I have received the same data. Now I will talk about the core technical terms. Okay, I have received 64 MB of data, and I have 8 machines in my cluster. So what I will do, I will assign each machine 8 MB, 8 MB, 8 MB, 8 MB of data. 8 64. Okay, so each machine has received 8 MB of data. Now what each machine will do, it will do a group count of its own 8 MB of data, right? 8 MB, 8 MB gets counted, 8 MB counted, 8 MB counted. Now everyone has counted, then they will share their data among each other. And then finally in the reducing phase, we will get the final group count results. Does it make sense now?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, please anyone ask any question because it is very important for you to understand the MapReduce. Yeah.
One question is, so this splitting of data, is it done randomly or is there any algorithm behind it?
Yes. The same thing I had explained that it is that this decision is being taken by the name node. Name node is the one who takes this decision on the basis of the availability of the data node. Who is the data node? Who is available to take the new data, right? So on this basis, this decision is being taken care.
So the name node is taking that decision which data node will get the data based on the availability.
Availability.
Of the data node. Okay.
Exactly.
And
based on the resources.
In the mapping part will actually take into account which data is getting stored where.
Yeah. Okay, so
all right.
Yeah, can you move?
Yeah.
So if everyone is understand this thing, then we are very good, because our main concept is to understand the HDFS and the MapReduce. Then everything is very easy. Okay, so there was a requirement to cover the hands-on. So I think in this 1 hour of presentation, it would be good if we understand the concepts in a detail, and then later on we can go for another session wherein I can cover the only the hands-on part, where I can show you how to set up the Hadoop, how to install Hadoop. I will show you the different parts like pig, hide, programming, and this thing. We can do this word count program or any other program, and I can show you practically those things. So I would suggest that we will go for another lab, another session, maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, wherein we can cover a good hands-on. We can actually see the cluster, how exactly this cluster looks like. But today concentrate on the core terms. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. Now the pillars of Hadoop. So I will take back you to the 10 years back when the world's data was increasing, and at that time the biggest question was to store the data. Suppose consider the example of your organization. Your organization is now dealing with 100 gigabytes of data. Okay. Now you have started receiving due to the demand and due to the digital world is already increasing, that you are started getting 150 gigabytes of data. Okay, so what you will do, you will just add one more you will add some upgrade your hard disk, you will upgrade your RAM and processing units. Okay, that's fine. Now once again we know the world is expanding, digital world expanding, and now your data volume is 250 GB. Then once again you upgrade it. Now it is 500 GB. Once again you upgrade the same server. Okay, but the biggest question was for how long you are going to do this. There is some limit. Okay, there is some limit, because a day will come where your single server would be of the size of like Empire State Building. Okay, and still you will feel there is some coming and I need to grow something over at the same place. And on top of it, the biggest challenge was to maintain these huge servers, because you know each time when you upgrade a server you need to have a downtime, and you cannot always go your application down, your production environment is shut and you are upgrading your servers. So that's a challenge, right? How to deal with the situation? The kind of scalability that I have explained over here is the vertical scalability, where you are increasing the resources in a single server. So world has thought about something different, which is known as the horizontal scalability. And Hadoop works on the horizontal scalability, wherein what we do in horizontal scalability, instead of upgrading a single server, we just plug in one more server over there. Okay, so my organization says I am dealing with 100 GB, I am expecting 150 GB, so I will add one more server of the same configuration. Next time my company says now it is coming to 350 GB, I will add two more servers. Sometimes it says I will have 5 terabytes of data, so I will add 15 more servers, 20 servers. I don't need to do anything. Everything is running as usual. I will just keep on adding the parallel servers. And that particular structure, that particular environment known as a cluster. That's a cluster. I have created a cluster of servers. So this is the horizontal scalability. We are scaling the things at the horizontal level. Any question in that? Okay. Next. After scalability, it is a fault tolerant systems. So I will tell you the fault tolerant systems is how Hadoop is. Hadoop can tolerate fault. The one big thing, we expect our system to fail. Okay, we expect it because it's a power and plug, right? It's a machine. It can fail any point of time. So Hadoop provides the fault tolerant at both the levels, at the server level and as well at the slave level, at the master level as well as the slave level. As we have seen, the name node, whatever the name node was writing, all the metadata information, the same information was getting written to a secondary name node. Okay. So what happens at some point of time if name node goes down? So then there is a secondary name node who just quickly picks up from there at the last point when it failed, and then secondary name node becomes the primary name node. Okay, the same way the data node. So what if the data node fails? Okay, so we have definitely seen that our name node allocates the data when the data node fails, but there is something more which happened that I will explain to you in just the next slide, how the data node is also a fault tolerant systems. I will explain you. Okay, but master we understand now. Now the next thing is the high availability. So we want our system to the high available. Okay, so Hadoop is purely high available system. It would 24/7 across 365 days. It would always be available for you because nothing is getting failed. So it is a highly available system. Okay, this is the third pillar of Hadoop. And the final is the distributed processing. So now we understand that Hadoop does a distributed processing, right? So these are the 4 pillars of Hadoop. Now here the thing comes. We have talked about this, and now you will see it technically. Okay, HDFS block. What is this block? So in earlier slide, when I was explaining about the file is getting split into different components, into different chunks. But the correct technical term to refer those chunks is the block. The default block size in Hadoop is the 64 MB, but you can change it as per your data size. Suppose a file of 512 MB comes, and if I had to make a different block of it, then there would be 8 blocks of 64 MB. Okay. Now what happened over here, that it will get total 8. Okay, and then it will allocate these 8 blocks to different data nodes, as I explained in the earlier examples. So actually your file gets, in our actual world, the real world, the data is in the file, but now your data is not in the file, but your data is in the block, because file is split into the different blocks. Okay, it's nothing but the file is, it is only the file, but we refer them as a block. Okay, and Hadoop deals with this block. It copies the blocks, it allocates the blocks, it works with these blocks. Now next thing is the block replication. This is very important thing. Okay, so this is the part of where the data node becomes the fault tolerant system. So what happened, once it copies the data to the data nodes, once it allocates the block basically to the data node, it allocates the same copy of block to 3 different data nodes. The default replication factor is 3. Okay, why 3? Why not 4 or why not 2? Okay, the reason behind is actually these are the clusters, and these data nodes are attached to the racks. Okay, the rack is nothing but, say, a LAN setup is there. In any organization, you will find a LAN connectivity there, where our systems are connected in a series. So that particular one series entirely is known as a one rack. All the data nodes are part of that particular rack. There would be different racks, because your all clusters, your all computer of your cluster will not be on the same rack. You will be having multiple racks in your entire setup, entire hardware setup. Okay, so what happens, once we copy the data, okay, so what happens, once we copy the data, we copy the data to the one data node. Okay, and then we copy the who is on the same rack, and then we copy to the other data node on the same rack. So 2 data nodes on the same rack gets the same block, and we copy the third part of the same replication to the other rack. So what happens, even if in the event of entire rack gets failed, our data would be preserved. So we taken care of the data node fail. If entire data node fails, then anyway I have those blocks running on the different data node on the same rack, and even if the entire rack gets failed, then I have a copy on some different data nodes. So you can understand, one rack, the same data would be there on 2 different data nodes, and in the second rack the same copy would be there. So both of the failure being taken care. So that's a block replication mechanism. This is how a typical rack looks like, that it has a switch and racks, and these are the data nodes. Okay, so block replication 3, we understand why the block replication is 3. And rack awareness, so Hadoop is very much rack awareness systems. It knows, Hadoop is rack awareness system is, in the sense, name node knows, right? It also knows about the location of data nodes, location of block present in the which rack, which data nodes. So on the basis of this, it can take the decision of the data allocation part, and it can very well take care of the data node failure and the rack failures. Okay, this is the final slides wherein we can say how to make a career shift into big data Hadoop. So definitely anyone from any background, whether it is a technology, any programming background, database background, administrative background, anyone can join Hadoop because you have already seen the Hadoop ecosystem involves everything. Okay, and even the business analyst or the financial people, everyone can build their career into Hadoop, and it's the next big change which is happening in the current world. And who should, and I would not say who should not, but everyone should aspire to get into the big data Hadoop industry, because the world demands big data, world is generating big data, and we need something to store and process the big data. Okay. So in today's presentation, we have learned about the big data. We understand big data. We have seen Hadoop application, the basic architecture, and different components of Hadoop. So here I am summarizing, and very much say it's the end of the slides. And thank you very much for attending. And yeah, I really enjoyed. I hope you too enjoyed, and I hope you understand concepts of Hadoop. Thank you very much for attending.
So, Piyush, a few questions. One quick question. So, you said that anyone and everyone can join it. So, in terms of, business analytics folks, people who come with little non-computer science background. So,
Yeah.
what all things, or where do you think they could fit into in a big data Hadoop environment?
Yeah. So
Or
Pratik, for them,
what should
yeah,
they learn in this in
exactly.
Hadoop?
Yeah. So the very biggest thing is that they're dealing with now, wherever which organization or wherever part they go, they will find the same set of setup. And in future, it is a trend that everyone will start using the big data and Hadoop. And it is bound to happen, very natural. So first of all, for them, the understanding the system is very important, right? So they should definitely understand the basics of big data and basics of Hadoop, the HDFS, MapReduce, definitely they should understand. So they will understand how the data and where the data is going to and fro. And yes, the kind of utility like Scoop would be very much of advantage, and Pig and Hive additionally, because they can do on-demand data generation and as the customized data extraction they can do from Pig and Hive. So these two, three utility they can use.
And one another question we keep getting from our participants is, do we need to know Java before we can learn Hadoop, or say any of the other software applications within Hadoop ecosystem you spoke about?
Okay, so the answer for this, Java is good to have but not mandatory. Okay, we can work on Hadoop without the knowledge of Java, yes. Apart from Java, Hadoop supports Python or C++ or some other languages as well. Yes, Java helps, but at the advanced stages, advanced levels, even if you don't know Java, Hadoop provides a lot of things to you with which you can complete your task. Because you know what happens once you write a big program or a high program, so in the background it produces Java codes only. So at some point of time, it becomes, for some technical users, it is easy to write something in Java and to do their get the work done quickly. But it is really not mandatory. They can do it without Java as well. And even people are, I think, comfortable with Python some, so they can alternatively use Python. That's not an issue. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, Piyush, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear you. Am I audible?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I want to add something with the Pratik's question. My question is, what are the prerequisites for Hadoop? As I have already get the answer that Java knowledge is preferable but not mandatory. My question is, how much knowledge in R or the OOPS or Linux and Unix platform is it necessary or helpful to work in Hadoop?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
I also, once again, and I also have a second question. My second question is that see, you have three platforms to work in Hadoop. One is a normal platform, another is architecture, and then third is analytics. So, what are the candidates' profile that fits into these three profiles?
okay.
That's it.
So yeah, thank you. So the answer to first question is, first of all, very first thing, Hadoop does not work on Windows. Okay, so it requires you to have Linux on your machine. Okay, but it's really not a problem because we have the virtual machines is there, so we can install the VM players and we can download the virtual machines of Linux, and then we can very well plug and play with Linux. So it's not a problem. If you have a little bit knowledge of basics of Linux or basics of Linux, like what CD does, ls command, more, or some kind of VI scripting, file reading, writing. So very basic knowledge of Linux. Just for you to copy some data, to read some files, to do some changes to some files. Very basic knowledge of Linux, Unix scripting is required. Apart from this, the Hadoop is there, so entire ecosystem you can learn. Okay, Java I already mentioned. So this is the prerequisites for you, that you know the little bits of Unix scripting, very little bit. Okay. Now the next thing is what sort of profiles. So the kind of role you mentioned, I think I can add more roles to this. And so suppose there is a administrator is there, database administrator is there. So they deal with the regularly day-to-day life with the database only. So for them, a utility like Zookeeper, where you do a overall administrator of the things, or HBase can be a best suited for them, wherein they will deal with the data part only, data administration part only. Okay. There is a programming. Okay, so for that, a profile can be of any programmer who is a C programmer, Java programmer, .NET programmer. So for them, is Hadoop is very much Hadoop invites them very much because they can use the pig and hive. Okay, for the programming, they can implement. They can use their Java as well. If you don't want to use pig hive, don't use it. Use your Java code and do your task, because at the end you will be writing some kind of map reduce. That's it. It doesn't matter whether you write in Big or you write in Hive or you write in Java or Python or .NET or any other language. Okay. The third category definitely for the business analyst can be there, wherein they can use this kind of utility of a scoop to deal with. There are some people who do data monitoring only. So some kind of production monitoring happens. So wherein those people who are typically involved with the production monitoring, they can use the OZ. Okay, OZ is a workflow manager. Scheduler is there, wherein they can use it. There is a set of people who use the who regularly. Let me just go to the ecosystem. One more component I wanted to explain you. Okay. Yeah. So Mahaut, yeah. So there is a analytics world. Peoples is there. So those who are comfortable with SAS, R, SPSS, they can use Mahout in Hadoop for the high-end analytics.
Okay. Piyush, are you there? Piyush, are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone is having any doubt, they can speak up.
All right, guys. So there are a lot of folks online as well. If you have any questions, you can type in your questions now, or you can verbally ask as well. I'll wait for another minute. All right. I think people don't have any questions. So, hey Piyush, thanks a lot for such an enlightening session on Hadoop. I think a lot of us who do not have any background in Hadoop understood, what exactly the Hadoop infrastructure is all about, what are the applications of Hadoop, and how different profile of people can make a career in Hadoop if they want to. And we also understood, how industry is using Hadoop and, how it all started. Plus, thanks for all the explanation, examples, case studies that you discussed, Piyush. Definitely, we'll have a follow-up session where we could also see some kind of hands-on. And thanks everyone for joining in as well. Piyush, thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining online as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.